caught up in all the hype. And if Tupac came back from the dead now to hear this interview, you would agree. They got caught up.
Me and Pac went in the studio and did a song together. And then them little dudes.
Outlaws.
Yeah.
Outlaws.
They came, like, as soon as we got there, they came up to Pac talking about, yo, Lauryn Hill dissed you, Mobb Deep dissed you, this and that, and da. So then Pac went in the studio and started writing about, I think it might have been that, I think it was.
Yeah.
KRS-One is shutting down the myths about Big Daddy Kane and Tupac's relationship, and the truth might shock you. A lot of fans thought Kane and Pac had beef, but according to KRS, that was never the case. They actually respected each other. So how did the streets and media get it so twisted? Simple. Suge Knight's fingerprints are all over it. Suge was a master at spinning narratives, pushing artists to pick sides and turning tension into dollar signs. East Coast versus West Coast wasn't just music, it was a business model that sold records, sold magazines, and kept the spotlight burning. But here's the thing, Big Daddy Kane wasn't trying to play into Suge's circus. Pac, on the other hand, got pulled into it whether he wanted to or not. KRS hinted that any so-called tension between Kane and Pac was never real, it was straight-up manipulation. Kane even had Death Row knocking on his door with offers, but he turned them down. That decision alone threw him into a drama he never signed up for. Behind closed doors, though, Kane and Pac had mutual respect, private convos, and even collabs that the public never got to witness. The real story is way deeper than the industry wanted you to know.
Tupac is a lyricist. See what I'm saying? It's just that he's not one of those lyrical MCs that spit stuff, but his stuff is, he spit deep lyrics that touch your soul.
Back in the mid-90s, Suge Knight was plotting to stretch his empire with the launch of Death Row East, a bold play to lock down the East Coast market. And who better to front this move than one of Brooklyn's sharpest lyricists, Big Daddy Kane? Kane himself admitted in interviews that he was offered a $100,000 advance and a deal that could have flipped his whole career.
Didn't Eric B try to sign you to Death Row East at one point?
Yeah.
What happened with that?
He called and said, Suge trying to, build a Death Row East, man. I think it might be a good look for you. So I went out there, and like when I walked in, these two big-ass Rockwallers came, and then Suge, he comes out the back. They come running around, sniffing around me and stuff, sits down with his cigar, sits his cigar down and does this. And both the dogs ran and sat down next to him. So I'm like, okay, this one of them meetings. He said, well, what you want? A $400,000 advance. Why you ain't just simply say $500,000? Man, you Big Daddy Kane, man. I can't see myself signing you for less than $1 million. I gotta give you $1 million. Because you already a household name. But then he was like, well, yo, look, I don't know how you doing financially, but if you want, I can just give you $100K in the morning. That's when I knew it was time to go. I was like, you just gonna give me $100,000 with no agreement? Nah, I was like, I'll let you know tomorrow. And then I went and switched my flight to like a 6 a.m. joint, got the fuck up.
But Kane wasn't blind. He saw the trap. He turned it down, making it clear he wasn't about to get dragged into that scene. That rejection instantly placed Kane in a neutral zone while the East Coast-West Coast war kept heating up. Kane wasn't fooled. Nobody hands you that kind of money without expecting to own you. He straight up said he knew he'd be dealing with the devil if he signed, and he wasn't selling his soul for a flashy payday. But here's where it gets deeper. This wasn't just about Kane protecting himself. By refusing that Death Row East deal, he also shut down Suge's master plan to pit him against Tupac.
Bottom line is that they got caught up in all the hype. And if Tupac came back from the dead now to hear this interview, you would agree. They got caught up in the hype. And Public Enemy prophesies, don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. And they got caught up. Biggie, they all got caught up, and it's a shame because we ain't supposed to go out like that.
The industry wanted a clash, but Kane and Pac had a mutual respect that couldn't be staged. KRS-One has said it time and time again. Big Daddy Kane never had beef with Tupac, and in fact, they had way more in common than people realize. But the sad part, Pac got swept into the East Coast-West Coast madness that the industry kept feeding.
Right? You being a respected lyricist, How you feel about the people that push the narrative and say that Tupac, he wasn't a lyricist?
Okay, but hold up. Tupac is a lyricist. See what I'm saying? It's just that he's not one of those lyrical MCs that spit stuff, but his stuff is, he spit deep lyrics that touch your soul. So I do consider Tupac a lyricist. You know what I'm saying? Even though his stuff is about substance, I do consider him a lyricist, because it's like this here. You have to be lyrical to touch someone's soul, to make someone feel like, yo, I don't know this man, but he knows my pain. You see what I'm saying? So I do consider Tupac a lyricist. I would never.
Kane, on the other hand, saw Pac's greatness early on and always defended him, especially when critics tried to downplay Pac as just a rapper and not a lyricist. Kane made it clear Pac could stand toe-to-toe with anybody, and here's the bombshell. There's an unreleased collab track they recorded together called Wherever You Are. It never officially dropped, but those who've heard it swear Pac more than held his own next to a legend like Kane. Anyone who doubts Pac's pen game needs to hear that track, because it shuts down all the noise about him not being lyrical. But that's not the only bond they shared. Both Kane and Pac connected deeply with the 5% Nation, also known as the Nation of Gods and Earths.
The mathematics, you know, the 5% thing, you was kind of heavy in that, the knowledge itself. That was really woven into your rhymes when you first took off. When did you get introduced to that? Were you a 5%er, or was you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I believe that I was introduced. I want to say 81, 82, somewhere around here.
It's, with this knowledge itself and knowing who you are. When you came in the game and during that era, man, knowing who you were and where you came from was important, man. You got a lot of that from the 5% Nation and your teachings, the first 120 and all that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you just said it, knowing who you are, you know. So, I mean, you know, when you study your lessons, you're learning your history and, you know, your rightful place in history, you know, and things of that nature. So that was something that was very informative and helped to, you know, mold and shape me as a better person.
That movement, born out of Harlem in the 60s, was built on self-knowledge, empowerment, and the belief that Black people are the original people of the world. Kane had been into it since the 80s, and you can hear it woven into his rhymes. Concepts like supreme mathematics and the supreme alphabet gave his bars a sharper, layered meaning. Even in joints like The Wrath of Kane, the influence is there, giving his lyrics weight beyond just clever wordplay. Now, when it comes to Tupac, his link to the 5% Nation hit different. He was never officially initiated, but the seeds were planted back in Baltimore, and through his mother, Afeni Shakur, a proud former Black Panther. Pac soaked up revolutionary ideas from an early age, and you can hear it in everything he touched, his interviews, his rhymes, even the way he carried himself. Self-knowledge, empowerment, fighting oppression, it was all part of his DNA. So while the industry kept trying to paint Kane and Pac as rivals on opposite coasts, the truth was they shared the same core values.
It says the East Coast, West Coast rivalry, number one. People were starting to say it's an East Coast, West Coast rivalry because it was people that's trying to make money. It was true people trying to make careers. It was people trying to get famous. It was people hustling other people out of money on the East Coast. You don't have no team, you need us. We from the East Coast, pay us X amount of dollars for protection. And some of these idiots was doing it. For us, how we looked at it is, we looked at it as we representing the West Coast, but we representing the ghetto.
That mutual philosophy is what gave them respect for each other, even when the cameras tried to frame it otherwise. But here's where things get wild. Suge Knight wasn't just running a record label, he was running narratives like a chessboard. Death Row was dominating, and Suge knew drama sold better than anything else. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry was his goldmine, and he wasn't shy about manufacturing heat to keep the money flowing.
This institution can never side with, come under, understand the exploitation of our culture. Never will you ever see me standing in the environment where our culture is being exploited. Or if you do see me there, the next moment this thing's gonna fall. I'm there to bring this shit down. If you see me in a situation like that, you should say, yo, watch out. Something's about to happen. Turn your cameras on. Something's about to go down. Why is Chris here? Why is he here? Something's about to, he gonna say some shit right now that is gonna,
His play with Kane was subtle but cold-blooded. By offering Kane that Death Row East deal, Zoog was trying to pull one of the East's most respected icons straight into his West Coast storyline. Kane's refusal did more than save him from a bad deal. It made him unpredictable. Suddenly, the media spun his neutrality as a statement, like Kane was standing above the chaos while everyone else was locked in the war. And with Suga's influence, even silence could be twisted into controversy. Tupac didn't have the luxury of staying neutral once he signed with Death Row. He became Suge's golden ticket, the flagship artist who had to carry the weight of the East Coast-West Coast feud on his back. Magazines, TV, radio, they all ate it up. And while Pac was naturally fiery and outspoken, a lot of the smoke around him got magnified, twisted, and in some cases, straight up manufactured by label interests looking to cash in. KRS-One peeped it early. That's why he never played the industry's rigged game. He kept calling out how the system was exploiting black artists for profit while setting them up to clash with each other. But here's the kicker. Suge wasn't the only puppet master pulling strings.
All of that happened afterwards was a ploy, and it was manufactured by Suge Knight.
When you say ploy, I don't know what a ploy means.
Here's the thing.
It was a game plan. Right. It was a game plan to get him to go over there.
It was a strategy.
So if you think about back then, Tupac got convicted of rape, he went to jail. That sucker, the Kevin Powell, did an interview for Vibe with Tupac.
The writer, Kevin Powell.
The light-skinned guy, I know him.
And Tupac said, "Thug life is dead." He said, "I might be killed after this interview, but I want my truth to be known." Right? And he's doing the interview, right? Suge Knight goes to get him out of jail.
Yeah.
When Suge Knight got him out of jail, it's the first time you heard Biggie and Puff did it. That whole East Coast, West Coast shit was manufactured by Suge. Suge did that shit.
But not the shooting. You're saying that?
No. I'm talking about
okay. Just to be
the
clear,
blaming of Puff and Big.
The 90s music machine had layers on layers of influence. Execs, A&Rs, even the media were all invested in making sure this rivalry stayed hot. Conflict meant cash, albums flew off shelves, magazine covers sold out, TV ratings spiked, and sometimes it wasn't even real beef.
That's a problem with Death Row and Suge Knight and Snoop and Tupac against me. It's a war. That's the most craziest thing I ever heard of in my life. I get no stripes for slapping a female. I don't hit women. Or I'm a prayer on the week. So how I'm a war with a guy who ain't no man? I don't have nothing against nobody out there who doing their thing. You doing your thing, you do it. But don't do an interview and say, well, the biggest war is between Death Row and my company. Death Row on a whole nother level. If they had a problem with us, we don't have a problem with nobody. Everybody know where we at 24/7, either at the studio or at the office. If there's an event going on, we're gonna be the first ones in the front row having fun. At the Super Bowl, we're gonna be there betting and cheering. So we're not the one high. There's a lot of people who make up like stories to try to get themselves famous. Or get themselves some yellow power. That's the wrong way to do it. If you're gonna do it right. If you're gonna be with Death Row, have one of these.
Artists were pressured to throw subliminals, or interviews got chopped up and edited just to make it look like shots were fired. Big Daddy Kane and Tupac were textbook examples, two respected lyricists, both with strong personal philosophies, who actually showed each other nothing but respect when they crossed paths. Yet the narrative painted them as enemies. Why? Because Sugi and his allies knew fans couldn't resist the drama, and they were ready to script every move.
The East Coast, West Coast thing, it just got out of control. Dudes was getting killed, and I felt responsible. But I couldn't stop it.
We ain't mad at the whole spot in New York, we just mad at certain people.
I got this new project coming out along with some other brothers called One Nation, and it's like an East Coast, West Coast collaboration to kill this whole new vibe everybody want to be on about it being a war between the East Coast and the West Coast.
Right.
It's really just a problem with two rappers. And the East Coast, West Coast thing is something that the journalists and people are making up just to get paid off it so it can drag out and everybody can have albums. They're perpetuating it so it can be drama. When it all go down, don't look at me and Biggie and be like, why is there a big East Coast, West Coast war when you're shooting this to 300 homes, 300 countries, telling them about an East Coast, West Coast war that they would never know exists. So that's where information becomes a problem. We both need to exercise greater restraint.
Damn. And let's keep it real. It wasn't just Suge. East Coast power players like Bad Boy and other execs pushed their side of the feud too, making sure the fire never died out. Big Daddy Kane's decision to walk away from Suge Knight's Death Row East wasn't just smart. It might have been life-saving. Think about it. Every artist who got tied up in that death row machine ended up surrounded by chaos, drama, or worse. Pac, Snoop, Dre, everyone in that circle was constantly under a microscope, with media twisting their every move and the streets watching close. Kane staying out kept him free from that spiral, and it's why his name never got dragged through the dirt the same way. Meanwhile, Tupac was locked in. Once he signed, there was no exit ramp. Death Row became his cage and his stage at the same time. Pac's music blew up bigger than ever, but so did the pressure, the surveillance, and the beefs being stirred around him. Every headline, every interview, every freestyle was dissected, turned into ammo for this so-called coastal war. KRS-One pointed out that Kane's refusal to play along proved you could resist the system, but Pac's situation showed how deadly the game really was once you were inside. It wasn't just about music anymore. It was chess moves, money grabs, and media manipulation at the highest level. And here's the chilling part. Insiders have whispered for years that Suge's real plan with Kane wasn't about collaboration, it was about control. By pulling Kane in, he would have had another respected East Coast heavyweight under his thumb. But Kane said no, and that no might have been the single move that kept him from being swallowed whole by one of the deadliest eras in hip-hop history. Suge Knight stood out from everyone else because he played the game the loudest and the hardest, using fear, loyalty, and raw street credibility to lock his artists in check. And with Tupac's explosive energy, Suge had the perfect weapon to keep the East Coast, West Coast fire blazing. Big Daddy Kane, though, wasn't having it. He stayed cautious, refused to be a pawn, but even that refusal got twisted into headlines that painted him as part of a drama he never asked for. While fans argued over fake beefs, the industry was moving chess pieces in silence, locking down contracts, slicing profits from collabs, and pushing albums with conflict as the marketing tool. The feud didn't just sell music, it sold hype, attention, and power. Suge and other execs knew that controlling perception was just as profitable as controlling the records themselves. And that's why the story of Kane and Tupac hits so hard today. It shows how much of hip-hop history got written by executives in boardrooms, not just artists in studios. Suge and the industry puppeteers thrived off the chaos, while the very artists fueling the culture got trapped in the middle. The truth is, the East Coast-West Coast war wasn't simply about two coasts or two camps. It was a stage production, with Suge as one of the main directors behind the curtain. Kane and Pac didn't fit neatly into that script, which is exactly why their real bond and respect barely gets talked about. So if you rock with the truth behind these untold stories, make sure you subscribe, drop a comment, hit that like button, and share this video to keep the conversation alive.